Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. This is the show where you don't have to worry about being judgmental because we do it all for you. Let's get right to it. We won't mention the moustache, Will, but who's your first nomination?
I think just, guys, because I've got to change my identity after this one.
Yes.
It's got to be two-tier Keir.
Two-tier Keir, the Prime Minister.
Indeed, and I'm sure the rest of my fellow panel will have plenty to contribute on him.
Can we just stop filming forever because he's won for the rest of 2024?
I mean, it really has been quite an extraordinary week, hasn't it?
It is astounding, and I mean, and to be honest, if you had chaos, he then doused it with oil and turned it into a crisis.
And threw another match on it.
Oh yeah, I mean, you couldn't have read the room so wrong in blanketing everybody who protested as far right. Now, the one thing that Keir Starmer, or two-tier Keir, hasn't done is actually define what is far right.
No, he hasn't.
And you can't turn round to a nation of people who are feeling impoverished from the last government, who feel that mass immigration is now swelling to numbers beyond control, that the state is under huge pressures, that there are illegal immigrants coming in their droves
4,000
and
since,
rinsing
since he got
us.
There are people who are concerned about immigration, but they're not all far right.
Yeah,
exactly.
That is the problem.
Well,
But also look at the
we've got a lot to
demographic.
get on with here, so we're not going to get trapped in all of this. But the point is, the bottom line is that, you know, of all of the people to be the plank, it is Keir Starmer, because don't forget, back in 2011, when he was the DPP, there was an awful lot of rioting and an awful lot of ethnic minority people were locked up. But we were told back then, well, they must have a good cause. They must have a just cause. We must look into why they're feeling so unhappy. Nobody's saying that this time around.
No, of course they're not. And the one thing that I do want to defend here, and I know Alex and I are going to clash horns on this, is Mark Rowley is coming in for such a beating at the moment, and the police officers are coming in for such a beating at the moment.
Well, there's a reason for that.
And the reason for it is two-tier
Keir. Yeah, we'll come on to that.
But you look at the individual who, quite rightly, he punched a police officer, he's gone to prison for 3 years.
Apparently that's what happens when you punch a police officer.
Indeed.
Unless you do it in Manchester.
Exactly.
Anyway, listen, let's have a look at some clips because we've got loads to get on with today, so I don't want to get stuck in too many quagmires. Have a look at Sky News trying to report from Birmingham.
Free Palestine.
Right, I think, apologies for the language you're hearing, but a sense of anger, I think you can hear there.
Yeah, Katie, I think Becky, I apologise. We need to leave you there.
Some people then went across to the Sky News TV truck and slashed the tyres.
Counter-protesters. That's the language, by the way.
Some might ask
where
they were protecting a mosque.
Some might ask where the police were at that particular demonstration. They were nowhere to be seen. Well, because apparently what the police said is, no, we don't need to police these particular protests because we've spoken to community leaders and it's all fine.
And they knew it would be largely peaceful. Let's see what Nigel Farage had to say. He was on Talk on a very good show a little bit earlier on this week.
If you've been told in 2010, 2015, 2017, 2019, in general elections, that immigration, legal immigration into Britain will be substantially cut, and it rockets to 750,000 a year. That's why people have lost faith in the democratic process.
And that's why people have lost faith in the democratic process. They
Can
don't trust the police
Let me just
anymore.
bring it back to the whole Keir Starmer point. The reason I think Keir Starmer is a plank, and I'm not suggesting that you should win, because obviously you shouldn't,
I should,
as usual, is because, look, Keir Starmer, of all people, as our Prime Minister, should be the one person in the country that governs for the country. In all of his manifesto pledges, in all of his campaign rhetoric, he said specifically, I'm going to govern for all, I'm going to govern for the country first, party second. In his first 4 weeks of being Prime Minister, he has done the opposite of that. What he's actually done is to seek, really, unintentionally or otherwise, to divide. He's effectively governing for ethnic minorities.
It's worse than that, because, you know, a 5-year-old could beat him at chess. When you play chess, you move the piece anticipating where they're going to move their piece and then where you move your next piece. And at the moment, what we've seen are what I'd consider show trials. It's the judge judification of let's make sure these riots don't happen
again.
It's
the equivalent of the stocks in the middle of the Finnish square.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, every single member of society out there who thinks that immigration's too high, that has that sense that there's a disparity, because we've all been told we've got to constantly wear our racist glasses and look for racism everywhere we go. They will be looking at those show trials and saying, OK, these white thugs who set fire to a hotel who did this are going down, and they'll be saying, are the other lot also going to be?
Well, if you notice the other
exempt?
thing that's interesting is that, you know, for the last 2 weeks we've been told that all of these people are moving around. They're mobile thugs. They move around in groups. They go from Southend to Rotherham to Liverpool. You know, every single person that's been sent to jail so far has been a local to the place where the riot was.
Yeah.
So there goes that theory.
I mean, to echo what Nigel was saying on your show and to echo the rest of the panel, one of the key issues that is underlying with people's discontent with this country, with the previous government, was this whole addressing of illegal immigration. This country is made up of migrants that have contributed to the society, to the economy, to everything else. Nobody's opposed to that. But it's the influx of individuals who are coming in and rinsing the system. And Keir Starmer is so tone deaf that he doesn't actually turn around. And I don't care what your politics are. Look at what the people want. You are supposed to be ruling and governing for your people.
Right. And
address these issues that people are unhappy about.
But look at what Labour do before, because two-tier in policing is one thing, but two-tier in a society with education, young black boys now, they were doing the worst in education, so the resources went there, forgetting everyone else. Maybe everybody should have equal opportunity. And then what happens? Young white boys are suffering. And that's still the case now.
We're going to move on from this in a second. We're going to move on from this in a second, but just to point out that, you know, when the Kumbaya moment came and everybody said, oh, you know, hope has triumphed over hate, and all of these people have turned out to show support for the refugees welcome here. They're all shouting Free Palestine and Allahu Akbar all over the place. So, you know, it's not exactly what I had in mind for peaceful protest. But anyway, over to you, because it's now down to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner.
Well, you know, Mark Rowley, he went into a Cobra meeting, and one can only surmise that that Cobra meeting didn't go very well. The police have been under attack for having two-tier policing. I think it's kind of anyone who's got eyeballs and ears can see that there's a different treatment to different forms of protest, riots, communities, whatever. Look, I am for policing securing the safest outcomes, and perhaps at that moment in time saying, all right, lads, put your weapons back in the mosque, might have prevented people being stabbed, fine. But it does seem to me, and everybody else around, that we've had week after week after week after week after week after week of people shouting intifada from the rivers to the sea, carrying foreign flags, shouting stuff in Arabic, to intimidating the Jewish community, and that's okay. And so, but you know, Rebecca's right. This isn't two-tier policing. This is two-tier life.
Exactly, and
this is two-tier life.
And also, the Mark Rowley is directed by Keir.
Mark Rowley went into that Cobra meeting and came out and was asked the question, is there two-tier policing? I just want somebody somewhere to have a bit of honesty right now. And he's under fire. His police force are under fire. The minute that civic contract with the, you know, law and order is broken, we're screwed. Why couldn't he have just said, the police have been put under a great amount of strain by the government?
He could have
just say it.
Let's have a look.
Let's have a
look at what he actually did instead.
Are we going to end two-tier policing, sir?
Good man.
I mean,
maybe he'll be part of the show trials. Because as a white man committing criminal damage.
He has just been at a meeting, which is the culmination of weeks and weeks of violence. He walks out as one of the country's most senior police officers.
As criminal damage?
And commits effectively an offence.
He also said earlier in the previous week, over the Manchester Airport police incident, that no police officer should ever lose their cool. Which he clearly did. He grabbed the top off the microphone and he chucked it.
Someone holding him to account. The freedom of speech, the freedom of press. That's respect he has with someone holding him. It's not someone in the public heckling him, hurling abuse. They're doing their job. I've been in those environments, and I'm sorry.
At a time when the police are under fire for losing their rights.
But the irony is, it was one of our journalists where he might think, hang on a sec, you're a little bit anti, you're holding us a bit too much to account. You're holding our feet to the fire a little bit too much. It was a journalist from an institution, a channel that I would say is on the left and supporting the narrative coming from the Metropolitan Police and the government.
Well,
how silly.
You see, I think it's unfair to make a full judgment on that situation, because I've been in those sort of meetings where you will have someone from the government who hasn't got a clue about policing, who's got their own cultural agenda, what they want to do in inclusivity.
But the police have got their own cultural agenda.
They do, but they have to follow the tram lines of what they're given.
Yeah, but he is also a public servant. He's paid by the public purse. He's paid by the taxpayer. He is due, whenever he's asked a question, to answer it politely.
I agree.
By consent.
But that just shows the level of frustration he must be under.
But why would you take it out?
Can we not talk over each other, or else I'm going to throw you all out? Doesn't work.
Why why are we all buying down the altar of Sir Keir Starmer? Because I'm pretty certain that when it was the Conservatives in government, anybody with a gob who worked in the public-facing institution was slagging off the Tories. Can't we turn around and slag off Sir Keir Starmer? You know, if you're in a public-facing institution.
Well, they'd prefer it if you didn't, actually. They'd rather lock you up for it. But we're running over now because we've been doing so much of these first two. We've got loads to get on with. So let's have a look at Nicola Wilcox, who was a victim of two-tier policing.
The policeman said, if you don't go home, we're going to have to arrest you. I said, and you can hear me say, well, you're going to have to arrest me then. So they're starting to grab hold of my arms. And I said, you don't need to manhandle me. I'm armed with 2 ice lollies. I'm not a threat to you. She was outside her own house trying to help the police by giving them ice lollies. And then because she was apparently attracting, some bad elements...
It's darker than this, OK? It's darker than this.
Be really brief, though, because we're out of time.
Right. That woman was surrounded by a mob, and she was worried about that mob following her to her front door. She actually lived just up the road. Yeah. And she was worried if she walked home, the mob would follow. Yeah. And that's why she said, well, I'm not going anywhere.
But the police are now telling people, we're arresting you for your own good.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. And then they claim that they've arrested 400 people, but only 100 have been charged. Anyway, let's move on. Russell, let's have a laugh. This is a funny show.
Okay. Let's mix it up a bit. Good morning, Britain.
Good morning.
And that's not a salutation. That's not a greeting. That's the rubbish programme. Yeah. It's on Monday to Friday on a certain other channel.
Yes.
And it's got even more rubbish.
Don't bother watching it.
No. There's other things to watch at that time of the day. Yeah. Absolutely. That are far, far, far better. So this is Good Morning Britain, where we saw the spectacle. Bearing in mind, and the backdrop to this is various channels, other places that have been chastised, for instance, for having MPs interviewing other MPs and so on. That's seen as a big no-no. So what GMB decided to do was to kind of go full throttle, really, and to have the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, interviewed by no other than her husband.
Brilliant.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it gets worse. There's been 8,200 complaints to date. As we shoot, there's 8,200 Ofcom complaints about this. Because not only was that inappropriate and surely breaches some Ofcom rules.
Cool.
Surely, given how others have been chastised over recent weeks and months. But it was an interview almost like they didn't know each other.
Right. Well, there was no
this weird spectacle.
Well, this is the thing. Let's have a look at it because it's incredible. It's quite remarkable.
What should be done now by the social media companies and the police and the government to stop this happening, because it's been happening for a week?
Well, you're right, Ed, that we have seen these things that are appearing online that are clearly criminal.
I mean, you think she might have said, as I was saying to you over the breakfast table
this morning, when we walked past each other,
know,
past the washing machine this morning, and we had this conversation.
Yeah, and I helped you tie your tie.
But Kate Garraway says, you guys haven't seen each other for a few days, obviously, because she's been, in her place in Westminster, and I guess, he's also in London, because that's where they shoot GMB. Yeah. Anyway, Kate Garraway apparently said something along the lines of, I'm sure that there are questions that Ed would like to ask you. And I'm thinking, just do it at home.
Yeah.
But have you not noticed by now that the left love gaslighting and role-playing so much that they've actually got to the stage to get at that filthy, greasy pole to where they've got to and have to sort of go along with the sort of ever-changing taboos and pretending that it's not a husband interviewing a wife, pulling wool over eyes. They've done it so much they actually have started to believe their own narratives.
Yes, talk about double standard. But it's the ultimate gaslighting.
They've gone mad.
Yeah,
they're pathologically insane at this point.
Yeah. But of course, it's not just us saying this. It wouldn't be a rival station saying, hang on, we think this is a bit stinky, this is a bit inappropriate. 8,200 Ofcom
it's clearly ludicrous. I mean, at what point would the ITV sort of producers not have gone, maybe we just keep Ed out of this until she's finished doing an interview with Kate Garraway? It's not difficult. Just tell her to go and have a cup of coffee in the green room. Yeah. She gets interviewed by Kate Garraway. Instead of which... He
clearly had staged questions. They'd also been scripted.
Yeah. Did she get an easy ride? That's what I want to know. I didn't watch it.
It depends what you're referring to.
Well, I'm not referring to
that.
Oh, no, we're back here again. As always.
Michael. Can't believe you said that. Your dirty mind.
This happened the last time Rebecca was on.
Yeah, stop it.
Innuendo going
Wait for my nomination as well.
Yeah, well, I know. It's a cock-up by a Frenchman, I think, isn't it? Anyway, maybe we should do that. Should we do that, cock-up by the Frenchman?
Yeah, let's carry on with the joke.
Yeah.
So when you're having a bad day at work, what do you use as an excuse? Do you say, I'm hungover, or I haven't slept well? Or do you say, my third pole got in the way? So, thank you for laughing. So, this Olympian pole vaulter, and that's not any kind of joke there, he is a pole vaulter, he was trying to do his. I
Vault.
don't have to
Vault.
try and do his. Yeah.
Trying to get his leg over.
Trying to get his leg over. He cleared the pole at 5.7 metres.
Yeah.
The bar. Thank you. I'm obviously not a sports commentator. And on his way
pole
down, it got knocked off by his.
Yes.
And
Well,
he's
his
a
name is
Frenchman,
Anthony Ammirati, which is probably French for something or other to do with amour. But let's have a look at it.
Do we have to?
He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson, as they would say in Big Lebowski.
Alex is starting to go further forward, but it's not because she's a gas, it's because
that's
we're closer
unbelievable. Also,
you know
I'm
what?
sorry, but without wishing to sound in any way rude, it seems a bit swollen to me.
Do you think he was excited?
I just
think so.
don't. I can't.
Well, you know, the excitement of the event, Mike. What
Yeah, I
can
mean,
we
I
say?
don't know.
You know, it could happen to the best of us.
Performance
breaking
like
Yeah, let's see it
but the
again.
other way round.
Let's have another look.
Do we have
Do it
to?
slow motion.
Slowing it down.
Do we have to?
Here we go. Here we go. No,
Something for the
watch
ladies.
closely.
Alex,
Watch
steady.
closely.
Few of the gents.
Steady, Alex.
All I can say
Oi.
is that if he's plank of the week, he's got a sizable plank.
Well, apparently,
That's a whole different show.
he has so impressed the people watching
can't.
that he's now been offered apparently £250,000
Yeah, to do porn.
star in a porn film.
Yeah.
But do you know what? This is so. I've been saying to my other half that I love the Olympics. I love all these different sports, aren't they?
I bet you do
brilliant?
now.
You know, it's almost like when you got, you know, attention deficit or something, and it's just all these great things. You're kind of blowing my cover. I mean, I like this stuff because it's like, you know,
Well, wouldn't it be ironic if it
Well, there's
was just a load
plenty of very
socks stuffed
scantily
down his
dressed.
Well, there's the
men.
volleyball.
He missed out on a medal
There's
because
that.
of
socks? Yeah.
I mean, the Olympics has been actually quite enjoyable this year, but not for the reasons that anybody thinks it should be. Not really for the sport, but just for all the other mad stuff that's been going on.
Yeah, but it's almost like
around
they
it.
set the tone, didn't they, with that opening ceremony?
Yeah, in
It's
the
just like
rain.
everything's Moulin Rouge and, you know, weird and sexualised. And so now I just watch the Olympics and I'm like, all right.
It's happening now. I know, absolutely ridiculous. Well, that's the first section, which went on far too long. Not to worry. Coming up in the next section, I'll have one for you, and it's something to do with Sadiq Khan, but it's not actually him. Also, the Olympic Committee are back in the news as well. This is Plank of the Week. Back after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. I mean, that is a pretty good start. I think we got 4 pretty good nominations there, pretty solid. It depends on whether we go down the political route. We might just ignore the riots altogether and do something completely different. I've got one for you, and this woman actually has been on Plank of the Week before. Her name is Amy Lame, spelled L-A-M-E. So you can call it Amy Lame if you want. She's the nighttime czar of London, in case you didn't know. Why we need a nighttime czar is anybody's guess. She makes £132,000 a year. She also operates as a DJ, has a radio show on the BBC Radio 6. She started doing the job a few years ago on 81,000, and she's now had a bumper increase of something like 60%.
Nice.
Up to 132 grand. She's not far off, I think, what old Sir Keir Starmer gets as Prime Minister. The problem is that she's been off work for the last 6 weeks, and nobody knows why.
Well, sick.
And nobody knows. Well, we're not sure because we asked the Greater London Assembly whether or not she was off sick, and they say we don't comment on individuals because it's not our policy.
Well, even though they're paid by the taxpayer.
She's actually a civil servant, technically speaking.
Yeah.
The reason that she's on the Plank of the Week is not because she's off sick for 6 weeks. It's that during the 6 weeks that she's been off, she's continued to do her BBC Radio 6 radio show, and has also been pictured out hiking and doing all sorts of other things around and about her kind of Instagram account, which she likes to show off quite a lot. But apparently she's too sick to go to work for the job we pay her $132,000 for.
What's she been doing? Because I think it's something like 1,600 venues in London have closed since the pandemic. Nighttime venues have closed.
Yes, and she's been in charge of all that.
So how do we justify a 60% pay rise and that figure?
How dare you?
Yes.
She is suffering from poor mental health.
Right. But not when she's on the radio.
How can you say these
But not when she's on the radio. Let's have a look.
That's her comfort space. That's her safe zone.
No, I know. Well, let's have a look at what she makes of Sadiq Khan. You might not be surprised to know she's a bit of a fan.
Now, Sadiq is a born and bred Londoner, and, you know, he captures everything that is so brilliant about this city. His parents came to London not just to survive, but to thrive. And that is the spirit that Sadiq carries forward in everything that he does. Sadiq has the energy and ideas to bring all of London's diverse communities together.
Yeah.
And what a fraud. That clip was actually filmed during the day.
I know.
Should have been night time.
Yes.
I thought so. I think it should have been in a venue somewhere saying, look at this great nighttime economy we've got. London's nighttime economy is, as you say, down the gurgler. I mean,
she looks like she likes an early night, though, doesn't she?
Well,
did she also not come back and then go straight on holiday? So she had 6 weeks.
I think she's taken some extra personal leave. Yeah. But the point is that nobody seems to... It's like, who is she accountable to?
Do you know what would be a really good nighttime concept if I was the nighttime tsar of London? You know, back in medieval period, people had, like, duels and sword fights.
Yes.
Couldn't we just merge everything together?
Well, we do have
and
those.
say to the various different gangs, but we're spectators. We could all pay tickets to go along and watch, like, the latest machete competition.
Well, I mean, you don't live that far away from Shepherd's Bush. You should pop down there.
I was going to say,
Friday night.
Croydon High Street.
Leicester Square. There's a lot of knife fighting going on there.
Like back in,
on a Saturday.
In Siena every year, they all get together under their family banners and they have their flags and they all come out.
Maybe we could have our own running of the bulls.
Wasn't Amy Lame a comedian?
Yes.
Wasn't she a comedian?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think
that's what I recognise, but she wasn't funny. Which is why she
Qualification.
probably got the job.
That's how she got the job, is it?
She's performing, so she understands the entertainment industry in the night time.
The other criticism that the Conservative group have got in London Assembly is that there's a nighttime czar in Manchester as well, a guy called Hugh Osmond, who we speak to quite a lot. And he was very active during COVID. He was really good at kind of lobbying government and local mayors like Andy Burnham to reopen, venues and all sorts of stuff like that. And guess what? He gets paid to do that job. Nothing. He does it for free because he's got a proper job where he runs a couple of nightclubs and venues. So he does the actual nighttime czaring job much better than her and does it for nothing.
Yeah, nice.
So, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, Will, over to you.
So, a controversial Olympic...
another great Olympic story.
Olympian, yes. Khelif Imane. Or I'm a man. I can't remember how you actually pronounce it. I'm a man. Khelif, the rather famous Algerian boxer who, within 43 seconds,
biologically male.
Who's biologically female, apparently.
No, biologically male.
XY chromosome.
Okay,
no,
so
it's biologically male. That's the
you see, there's a lot of confusion around this. And in 2003, during one of the major, I'm a boxer.
Yeah.
And I box 4 times on average a week.
You don't box women, though, do you?
I never box women.
No.
I have sparred with a few women, and yes, I've come across some amazing
You've probably
female
been hit
boxers.
by a few women as well.
I have been hit by plenty of women, Michael. Not necessarily in the ring.
No. Thank God for that.
But I would say there is absolutely no way that there should be any kind of contest, whether male by birth or female by birth. The fact is, the chromosomes take part.
Determined.
But also, there was a test done in Moscow where the International Boxing Organisation and various other international boxing associations have turned round and fundamentally said, you have not passed the genetic, the DNA testing to classify you as a woman. Yeah. Now, whether that be through testosterone enhancements, human growth hormone, or whatever it might be, there was she was in the semi-final yesterday with the Thai fighter, and literally again decimated her.
Well, she's in the final, I think. I mean, the thing is, it's an accident of birth. She suffers from a kind of strange intersex scenario, but the fact is that she remains born biologically a male. The other thing you might not be surprised to know, there's another fighter who's, I think, from Taiwan, who's in a similar situation, who also keeps winning.
Liu.
So they'll probably end up both fighting each other in the final.
The final of the Olympics women's boxing is going to be between 2 men, which is just, sums up the world.
But guess who's in charge of all of the explaining for this, for the IOC? It's a British guy whose name escapes me, but he was best man at Sir Keir Starmer's wedding.
Yeah.
Oh,
and just to make it even more weird, just to make it even more weird, he was only one of 4 best men at Keir Starmer's wedding. I mean, I don't know who has 4 best men. I mean, you can have 4 bridesmaids. Why would you have 4 best men?
Well, no, they probably were bridesmaids, but identify as men.
Maybe, you could be right. But so...
But, I just find in the 21st century, we spend a lot of time having to discuss genitalia, rather than just using our eyes and being like, see that really long arm extension, those rippling biceps, and the fact that you sound a bit like,
George. Yeah.
I don't know which George, but some
Doesn't
George.
matter, a George.
But it's even more simple than that, though, isn't it? The purity of the debate, and look, on the basis that you can identify as whatever you want, except when it affects other people, which is my mantra, it comes down to the chromosome test.
Yeah,
you can't trick or change your chromosomes.
But they're blaming
XY chromosomes, you're a man.
Yeah, exactly.
This particular boxer went through male, puberty, which
and
is
was
why
also
that
banned,
stronger and bigger.
And was also banned, as Will said.
But also in terms of the testing, what they looked at is performance enhancing, but they didn't look at genetics, and this is where Russia really kicked off because Khelif actually defeated one of their undefeated boxers, and really the name escapes me, but a very, very capable boxer, and they were like, hang on, this doesn't make any sense. And Khelif's fights have been so quick, even with the fight against the Thai fighter yesterday. It was over literally within seconds.
Within 1 punch. So I've come up with a good idea, though, for you.
Yeah.
I think I've got the answer to this. How about this for a new test to see whether or not you should be fighting as a man or a woman? There you go.
I think that would give it all away, wouldn't it? That would help.
Right,
Definitely.
Alex, over to you. Wes Streeting.
Wes Streeting sort of veers from commonsensical to just plain madness. And when he said, I'm going to uphold the Cass report and stop sort of, giving kids weird mutilating drugs because they've been brainwashed online, he's now turned around and said something absolutely bonkers, which is, if you're a racist, you shouldn't get treatments on the NHS.
Yes.
What?
Now, I've watched Grey's Anatomy, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to know anything about medicine, that's where you should begin.
Yes.
And I watched an episode of Grey's Anatomy of a man with a big sort of swastika who's having a heart attack, and Christina Yang and some black surgeon had to break the ribs open and save his heart because the Hippocratic Oath is all about protecting life, whatever you're bent, however vile you are. We have prisoners who get sent to hospital, and when they sort of are conscious after an operation, after a surgery, are handcuffed to and have armed guards and stuff. Sometimes they escape, but we've never had a system of you shouldn't get medical treatment because we don't think you're a nice person.
Yes. Yeah. We don't agree with your politics.
Where does that end? But where that goes is by
Where-
way of social contracts.
Yeah, right.
Eventually,
But
when
this
it comes
is
to
what I'm
currency being
saying.
controlled by the government as well,
We all
electronically,
sort of
when
went-
cash is gone, you end up in a position where you won't be able to do, say, or spend in
So
certain places,
this is the
given
thing.
where you are in society.
We all went with the big Labour majority. We're like, well, nothing could be worse than the Conservative Party.
Things
they were
can
like,
only get better.
And they were like, well, let's see if that's true. And all of a sudden, now, my gosh, they've got a big majority. These riots have happened, and the most extreme forms of, not North Korean levels of Stalinism is coming out from these people. They're like,
But if
you
it
don't
follows-
get life-saving medicine if we think you're not nice.
But Alex,
Let's
do you think
put
if it-
all
if it
media on
follows-
trial. Let's shut up social
But
media.
if it follows that if you're extreme right, you shouldn't get NHS treatment, surely that would also apply to the extreme left. So someone like, let's say, Jeremy Corbyn,
No, of course not. That's far
should
too
also
practical,
presumably not get treatment.
But
they're not saying that.
We're talking about medical ethics here. If we just steer away from the politics of it, medical ethics. We treat people in prisons.
Yeah.
We don't have a moral compass, especially emergency medicine. There is none. So what we're saying is, if we don't like someone's beliefs, they don't deserve chemotherapy.
And then who decides?
Exactly. What about mentally unwell people? People that might say things that they're not really aware of what they're doing. Those things. And also, the NHS, what about the people who've never paid into the system to use the NHS? What about that
Hang on,
one?
we're moving to the whole healthcare tourism thing here.
There's an entire place called Broadmoor Hospital full of people who are batty and have gone out stabbing folk, basically. So what do we do with them under Wes Streeting's new algorithm?
But let's also
you're
be
not
clear-
nice, you've
but
done
let's be
bad
clear
things,
what this
no
is.
medical treatment for
Advocating
you.
that because of your political beliefs you should or should not get certain things that other people do. That is what we call fascism.
Yes.
Fascism is not just something on the right-hand side of the
Is
political
anyone
spectrum.
else
This is
alarmed-
fascism.
Is anyone else alarmed that Sir Keir
Stalin.
There you go. What a Freudian slip. What a
That's
Freudian slip.
This is
Sir Keir Stalin.
Sir Keir Starmer. How to be known as.
Like it, like
finished
it, like
my
it.
own sentence.
Yes.
So unexpectedly, I got there faster
Brilliant.
than I thought.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer.
We're keeping
I'm
that.
going to use that.
That's got to
Sorry,
stick.
stealing that. I'll give you occasional credit for it whenever I say it. But that is amazing, isn't it? And Wes Streeting, who was actually at one point the guy that we thought was the sensible face of Labour, because he pretended, presumably before the election, that he was actually the guy that understood that the NHS wasn't to be ridiculously kind of worshipped and knelt down to, and that it was broken and that it needed reform. Now he suddenly wants to ban people from going into it and getting treatment. Because he doesn't agree with their politics.
And what's next? Anyone that voted reform?
Oh, yeah.
For instance?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. They're going to try and get reforms thrown out of Parliament, even though they've been elected. But that's Sir Keir Starmer for you. We got a lot from the Olympics, actually. We've got another one coming in. And then a serious one about the Middle East as well. This is Plank of the Week. All right, we're still laughing about Keir Starmer. We're really trying to stop because it's down to Russell now with another trip down memory lane to the Olympics.
Yeah, so moving away from politics back to, I guess, what can only be characterised as spoiled celebrities at the Olympics.
And this is, of course, the Olympic sport of trying to get into a restaurant.
Or being spoiled, really, which I think Serena Williams has won the gold medal for, frankly. So Serena Williams is my nomination. Why? Because she was at the Olympics, obviously spectating, has every right to be there. I'm sure she was very welcome.
So was she not one of the ones carrying the torch? I seem to remember the night of the opening ceremony, in that awful pouring rain, they were all on a boat. And she was standing there, absolutely soaked,
not looking very happy,
looking really unsteady as well.
Yeah, but also like scowling.
A few nights later, she's even less happy because Serena Williams, famous as she is, thinks that she can rock up to one of the most famous hotel restaurants in Paris, the Peninsula. Go up to the very, very well-known and very sought-after, in high-demand restaurant on the roof.
Let me just read this for people who are listening. I've been denied access to rooftop to eat in an empty restaurant of nicer places, but never with my kids. Always a first.
So the reason that I think she's a plank, apart from her being very spoiled, that she thinks that she can just turn up to any busy restaurant in Paris at the time of the Olympics, which is, I mean, it's perhaps not been as busy as they would like to have been, but it is still pretty busy. And she should be able to just demand a table. Because there were free tables there, unfortunately, she didn't understand the concept of bookings and reservations. Right. And the maitre d' apparently says to her, I'm sorry, but all of the tables that you're saying they're empty and therefore I should be able to sit at, they're actually reserved by other people that have booked. You haven't, I'm sorry, there's no table for you. What does Serena Williams do? Names and shames that restaurant and that hotel.
Never get a table again.
How many followers? 10 million followers. And I think that's absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, but that's spoiled. I mean, Rebecca will know this. Spoiled. I mean, working with celebrities as well, they can be the most entitled bunch.
They are their own entitled, but they live in an echo chamber of their own kind of, I'm grandiosity. But what I think is really interesting is she was with her children. She's got a 6-year-old and a baby in arms. I don't think her second one is even 1 yet. What about everyone else who was probably saving up to go to a gorgeous Michelin-star restaurant, sit on the rooftop? Some people save up for a long time for those kind of privileges.
And wait months.
Can you not take the kids to McDonald's? They'd have way more fun in McDonald's with a Happy Meal. And then perhaps you pre-book with your partner and go later. It's the kind of...
and the restaurant also says, we did actually ask her, and they admit they didn't recognise her.
I think we've got a tweet from them as well, but carry on.
Yeah, they didn't recognise her. They said, look, as we would say to everybody, if you just wait in the bar, as soon as the table comes free, you can sit down. That wasn't good enough.
And they're actually being very gracious. It says, please accept our deepest apologies for the disappointment you encountered tonight. Unfortunately, our rooftop bar was indeed fully booked, and the only unoccupied tables you saw belonged to our gourmet restaurant. So, I mean, it's perfectly reasonable. I mean, we've all been in that situation where
even
you see,
Mike.
where you walk into a restaurant and you go, I'd like to sit over there, and they go, no, you can't sit there, it's reserved.
Yeah.
And you sit there, and you sit there, and you sit somewhere else, and you watch as nobody goes and sits at that table. And it does happen. But,
I remember once when you and I were going to go for dinner at an unnamed restaurant in Covent Garden, and this is what happened, right?
Yes.
We were going to go, do you remember?
That's right, the guy made me sit outside.
Yeah, made you sit outside in the street like a doll.
Maybe.
This is your show.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe.
I remember that.
But I'm like, I'm not eating in there because I said, can I sit at the bar? And he went, no. And I went, why not? He said, you have to sit outside.
Yeah.
And I went, why?
It was some of that weird COVID Venn diagram period.
Weird stuff going on.
Yeah, we were just like, nah.
That was the exception.
Yeah. But also, don't these people have people who make reservations for them?
Yes,
I mean,
so
they
actually,
have so many.
respect that she didn't get her PA to do it.
Right.
But she's at the Olympics. She is an Olympian herself. I think she just assumed that everyone would know who she was and everyone would bend over backwards for her, because a lot of the time they do.
Right.
And it's actually quite refreshing to say a restaurant. And that poor maitre d', he probably said she didn't recognise her in the tweet, I think. Yeah. That poor maitre d', that's someone's job. That's someone's life.
But I think it's done that restaurant, the Peninsula, the world of good. I mean, talk about brilliant PR.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've done nothing wrong at all.
Done them any,
they've done nothing wrong at all.
I hope not.
But that is
well
the
done,
thing.
Peninsula Paris.
Yeah. Also, Paris is the sort of place you would expect. You expect them to be really rude, don't you? You sort of go. You wouldn't expect to go.
And also busy.
I once went to a restaurant, very expensive restaurant in Puy-sur-Loire. Which has got 3 Michelin restaurants in the space of about 200 yards, right? And it's all full of Porsches and really expensive Ferraris from Paris. And we couldn't get into the most expensive one. Got into the second most expensive one, and I ordered this, what I thought was a very nice starter of like veal medallions in a vinaigrette sauce. Nobody spoke any English at all. When they brought it, it was a cow's tongue curled inside a sort of earthenware pot, and it was raw.
Nice.
And the only bit I got right was that it had a vinaigrette sauce. And I was on my honeymoon, actually, years ago.
And was it about 80 quid?
I don't know. I've no idea.
At least.
But the wife said, Is that what you wanted? I went, oh yeah, of course, absolutely. And I sort of picked away.
We've all done that one, Mike.
Because it even had the sort of the bit on the top of the tongue, which is a bit sort of yellowy. And anyway,
bit of grass,
terrible memories.
Delicious.
Anyway, Rebecca, over to you.
Yeah, this is a nomination that I always wish wasn't true, but unfortunately it is, in that the Iraqi parliament are now in discussions to change the legal age of girls from 15 to 9. So at the moment,
legal age to get married.
To get married, yes, from 15 to 9.
Christ.
At the moment, there are some marriages where religious leaders can, confirm them, but generally the courts do it, and the courts decide, what's appropriate and what's not. I think there's about 20% of marriages are with women who are under 18.
Right.
And at the moment, they're having discussions about changing the legislation on something called personal status law, whereby the courts will not have to approve marriages anymore, and it will be down for religious leaders to do so.
Yeah.
It's so grim. It's not something I need to discuss with you why or how, because it makes no logical sense. What really concerns me is we're so preoccupied with trans rights and everyone's rights need to, be sort of considered. Right. But children, young girls in particular, this is so disgusting and terrifying that we're just going so backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they are. I mean, hopefully we're not.
No, but Afghanistan's actually as bad. It's down to 6 to 8 to be married. I mean, it's beyond sort of conception.
The thing is, we are going. Let's be realistic about this. We are going backwards in this country as well. We are, because we're not able to talk about women's safety. When you look at the amount of crimes taking place now, if it's someone who's coming after you to try and nick your mobile phone, they target women by themselves because they don't fight back. Yeah. When we look at things like insurance, these sort of insurance setups where you've got young men riding scooters into the side of cars, and then it's the woman who stops the car and says, "Are you all right?" and gets mugged. When you're looking at sexual harassment, when you're looking at the increase in rapes, when you're looking at the widespread availability of pornography, wherever you look now in society, we're throwing women under the bus. So are we going to be preoccupied with what they're doing in Iraq, in old pedostan? No, clearly not. Because we're not even better in this country, quite frankly. We've seen that with grooming gangs. We have lost the argument on all of this.
But even
something
on social
really
media,
deranged has happened.
It doesn't have to be, as sort of, things like that. We're not policing social media, so our children are getting exposed to all manner of things. We're horrified by what goes on in Iraq, but what's going on here?
Let there be a football competition in Qatar and Peter Tatchell's in the middle of a roundabout with a banner. I mean, what about this?
Okay, so
Gary Lineker's there being paid to comment on it.
Gary Lineker.
So a good example, Keir Starmer has turned around and basically said, OK, I'm going to throw all this money at special troops and police to basically deal with protests and everything else. Yeah. Where the hell has the money gone to women's safety? Where's money gone to policing tubes, buses, the streets, community support officers, all the sort of things?
Well, they've shown, haven't they,
that
if they want to get out there and show a show of force, they can do it.
Yeah.
But we're getting a bit serious here, guys, as well. Because
sorry,
don't forget, it is supposed to be comedy. So I know there's not much fun in that. But one thing that I did find a bit ironic was in the papers this week was the British Medical Association have apparently gone against the Cass report and have decided that it's wrong to ban children from getting puberty blockers.
What?
So they've now gone the other way. This ridiculous organisation, which is like the Marxist Doctors Union, have already said thanks very much for the 22% for the junior doctors, but actually we're going to go on strike again next year anyway. And now we're going to get all the GPs to work part-time because of their work-life balance, because they're worried about getting burned out. I mean, it really is quite ridiculous.
It's not real world stuff, is it?
I mean, it's unbelievable.
We're in a world
Do you know what's going to cheer you up?
Go on.
Sir Keir Starmer!
There we are. Very well done.
He should win it.
Alex. He might win it now just because he's got a good name. Coming up, though, we're going back to ITV. I think they might have a double header.
Could this top GMB, though? I mean, this is going to be tough.
Well, it could well do, but we shall see. Coming up next on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're into the final bit of it now, where not only do I give you my final nomination, but I decide who is going to actually win it. And I'm going to go back to ITV for this one. And you remember that bloke that used to drive us all insane whenever there was the COVID press conferences, and they would have, old Death Rigby would get up and ask her a question. And then you get Peston. And I remember once sitting in the car, because I can't remember where I was going, but and Peston started asking a question. I had the radio on, and the phone went, so I answered the phone, hands-free, obviously, chatted away, had about 5 minutes, 6-minute conversation, came back off the phone. Peston was still asking a question. It's the same question. He hadn't finished yet. So let's have a look at Peston and the style in which he likes to kind of consult.
You said yesterday that your priority would be to govern for those who didn't vote for you. Some 80% of British voters didn't vote for you. That's including those who didn't vote at all. What does that mean in practice, in a sense, for the culture of the government and how you'll govern?
Thank you, Robert.
So that's typical Peston, right? This week, in case you're a particularly big fan of Robert Peston and ITV and his show, which goes out on a Wednesday night, I think it used to anyway, there's a job opportunity there. And he put out a tweet this week that said, if you are gripped by politics and want to work in television or the media, maybe our new internship on the Peston show is for you. Click here for how to apply and attached are details of who can apply, because this is the good bit, right? So where it says opportunities.creativeaccess.org.uk/job/production, it then says, this opportunity is only open to individuals from a group that is underrepresented in the creative industries. This includes, but is not limited to, Black, Asian and ethnically diverse candidates, disabled people, those undergoing gender reassignment, transitioning and individuals from lower socio-economic backgrounds.
Someone explain to me how that's not discriminatory.
Oh, can someone explain to me how they are? Can someone explain to me how they are underrepresented in the creative industry?
Right.
Sorry,
I know.
Everywhere.
I know. Well, I mean, clearly, they might as well have
industry.
just said whites need not apply.
Yeah.
And I was reminded when I read it of the things that you used to get people complaining about back in the 60s. You know, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that.
No
isn't
whites,
it?
no dogs.
Same thing.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. Yeah, it's the B&Bs.
I love the fact at the bottom of the list it says people from a lower socio-economic background, and yet this is an unpaid internship in central London for all of 3 months.
I think there's
13 quid an hour.
It's a little bit of
something.
money. It's 13 quid an hour. But people have pointed out on Twitter, well, the trouble is that the only people who can afford to do a job like that tend to be from wealthy backgrounds because their parents have to bankroll them, get them a flat in London. They're not going to get people moving down from Darlington
but
and staying
£30
in.
an hour
You know,
is a lot of money. I mean, a standard security guard that you'd see in a shop will get £15 an hour.
Yeah, but you can't. What I'm saying is you're asking for young people to come and join your organisation. You're paying them a pittance, which is also pretty scandalous, quite frankly. An organisation like ITV that pays its stars, millions, and you're expecting them to come from what you regard as underrepresented
So how long is it
industries.
going to be, do you think, before straight, middle-aged white men are the most oppressed demographic in Britain?
Well, we already are.
We already are.
It's happened.
Yeah, we already are. But, of course, the reason for that is that the reason they have to make up for it, this is like the argument they make about climate change and how we've exported all of our, industrialisation and pollution to China. So we're still responsible for it. No, we're still responsible for it. It's still our fault, even though they're the ones with all the coal-fired power stations. No. It's our fault for doing that. Yeah. And the reason why we have to suck this up is because we've had all the privilege. We've got the houses, we've got all the money, we've got the big cars. Yeah. Well, actually, no. Most people haven't.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I have, and so have you. But I mean, that's not the point, is it?
But with that advert, there's obviously bias in there. We can tell the kind of characters they would like to hire and want in their organisation. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But there's so many ways you could have worded that. It was so blatantly clear. You could have said, we welcome applicants for everyone. If you need more time to apply, if you're not in London, we can facilitate
hang on,
something.
Rebecca, sorry, the way to word it is just to say anyone can apply and you will be hired on merit.
Well, no, I do think some people might think, that's not for me because I don't live in London. Or I might not
work with Robert Peston.
Or it's a very male-dominated environment and I don't know if I'll fit in. I think there are ways to encourage people to apply, but that is just so
I'm with Russell. How is it not illegal?
Yeah. But even positive discrimination is discrimination.
Of course it is.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, of course it is.
There's no two ways about it.
we have something called the Equalities Act.
Yeah.
Surely that must be in...
That is in breach of the Equalities Act.
Yeah, of course it is. As somebody who used to work for the BBC and used to work for ITV and was sort of almost pushed into the arms of working with Nigel Farage, because I realised being called Alexandra Phillips and being white wasn't going to get me far in the world when it comes to broadcasting, apart from here. That works. I think most people, when they've worked within these organisations, realise that actually being white, being middle class, actually being working class is a massive disadvantage.
Class, yeah, it is.
That actually the creative industries are not just dominated by these people, but it's the only stuff they pump out. You've got to have a gay, black, one-legged lesbian Doctor Who, or it's just
that's the next
there is
Doctor
no.
Who, coming up next week, you know. Right, we've got to choose because we're out of time. And I'm going to move completely away from the obvious choices.
Oh, no,
yes,
Mike, you can't do that.
Because I think the winner of it this week has got to be Good Morning Britain. You know, for
totally agree.
You know, Yvette Cooper be interviewed by her husband without saying he's her husband, without saying that they've got they live together, without
and rehearsing a conversation they
And
probably had 20 minutes previously.
If I had a vote in the Keir Stalinist regime that you operate, I would vote for the pole vaulter because he really did have the
Well,
plan. That is the best one.
But maybe he's poll of the week rather than...
You know what? It's just because you want to see the clip again.
Yeah.
Can we play it?
Yeah.
No.
I've seen it. And also, Sir Keir Starlin will be planked plenty of times, don't worry. So, that was it. Plank of the week. You are planked. Good Morning Britain and ITV. We'll throw that in as well for good luck with Robert Peston. Thank you to Will. Thank you to Alex. Thank you to Rebecca. Thank you to Russell. We'll see you next week.